And we are back. You are listening to Live from the Heartland. We do every Saturday morning at 9 a.m., we broadcast live from the stage at the Heartland Cafe. And we try and bring folks who are doing good things in the community because the world needs all the good that we do. And one of those people is the fellow sitting across from me right now, Tracy Siska, who was brought to my knowledge by Laura Herman, one of our co-producers out there in D.C. Hey, Laura, hope you're listening, babe. Tracy, you get a lot of. I'm in awe of you, frankly, because as a person who took the cop exam at age 25, it was a few months before I met Michael and started the Heartland 6 months later. It was because I grew up on the southwest side where a lot of policemen lived. In fact, it was, sort of required that was about the only, and there was a lot going on back then that made me wonder, where is Officer Friendly once he leaves my neighborhood? Because all I heard was what happens once he leaves my neighborhood, and it wasn't good. Now we sit here now, it's 2010, and the Burge trial has begun.
Yes, finally.
Can I hear a huzzah? Huzzah! Come on, guys. All right. So your outfit is called Chicago Justice Project, and maybe you could do a brief description for people who have never heard you before of the Justice Project.
Yeah, the Chicago Justice Project is an organization that's centered on increasing community access to information from the system so they can better understand it and then better challenge it if they so seem to wish to do.
Mm-hmm. And how long have you been in operation?
We've been in operation about 3 years, about a little over 3 years.
Boy, you've come a long way in a short time.
We have. We're doing pretty good.
It's great. Before I forget, one of the reasons that I'm always wanting to catch up with you, and I don't want to tire you out, but you're doing such important work, and I get the email updates. One of your email updates was inviting people to a Cubs game. Excuse me, I'm a Sox fan.
A bar event watching a Cubs game.
Yeah, watching a Cubs game. That's right. Yeah, can you imagine going to an event, paying to watch a Cubs game?
Well, you're paying to support a great organization.
There we go.
And be bored by watching the Cubs. How's that? Is that fit for you?
Yeah, I like that. Sorry, that's just Sox Cubs thing. We had to do that. It's over with. Now we'll move on. But your event is basically a benefit for the Chicago Justice Project, and it was couched in the news of the day. So why don't we talk about some of the news of the day that you think is important? I'll just let you pick 2 or 3 stories that speak to what you do on a daily basis.
Okay, well,
for the public.
I think this week gave us plenty of examples to talk about. I think the most important one would be the Riley Fox. There was recently, actually as of yesterday, there was a press conference in which the Will County prosecutor came out and announced charges finally in the murder of Riley Fox, who was an 3-year-old girl who was abducted from her house and murdered. And for those who don't remember, the father originally, a couple months after the investigation went stale, the father was taken into custody, interrogated for long hours, very abusive, very coercive, and he eventually confessed. Took back the confession right away, got a high-powered lawyer. 8 months later, they finally did the DNA test, and he was innocent and exonerated.
Wow.
So that the father, Kevin Fox, and the family got an $8 million settlement that was just recently upheld by the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals. And then the Will County State's Attorney comes out and announces, hey, we finally caught the guy. We ran the DNA in the database, and lo and behold, a sex offender in prison pops up as the guy who did it. As bad as that story is, what's worse is in that press conference, the Will County State's Attorney is questioned by the press about Kevin Fox, the father's false confession, and said, why do you think he did it? And this was the educated response from the head prosecutor in Will County. Well, people of my generation, I'm 60, people of my generation, they don't falsely confess. It's because he's a Generation Xer or a Generation Y people. There's something with those people and their personalities. So we really need to have Kevin Fox cooperate with us so we can figure out what in his personality made him do that.
Yeah, like what?
Right. It didn't happen to be that you walked him after lying to him, walked him behind 3 locked doors, put him in an interrogation room, told him for hours that he was a rapist and murderer, that he murdered his 3-year-old daughter, had him take a lie detector test, then lied to him about it being false, then brought his wife into the room after holding her illegally for several hours in a locked room incommunicado, and told her and screamed at her about how she was married to a rapist and a molester and a murderer.
What's up with that? Why? I mean, do they know what they're doing? Do they know that they're actually flying in the face of justice, or are they sincere? Are people sincerely thinking it's got to be this guy, so we're just gonna?
Well, they were. It's a weird convergence of corruptive practices and just incompetence. Because as it turns out in this investigation,
that's funny. That's how it appears.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, but you understand what just was revealed this week is that at the press conference is that the night that Riley was abducted from her house, there was a burglary at the house next door.
And
that the
this
police
was never
looked
put
at.
together?
No, the police never looked. I guess they never went to ask next door, knock on the door, and say, hey, is anything different? Anything happen? What did you see? Well, it turns out there was a burglary. The house next door, they never investigated it. Had they might have actually caught the guy.
All of us who watch Law and Order know that that's like one of the first things you do, right? You poll the neighbors.
Well, you would think that and I've talked to police sources since the press conference. You think you want to get in when a little girl disappears. You want to get in every house within a certain circumference of that home, as you can. Knock on the door. Can we come in? Can we look around? Can we talk to you?
Exactly.
Did you see anything? Right, all of this stuff that we're hearing from the audience.
Yes.
Right. They didn't do that.
That's. I don't even know the word for it.
Well, and then
it's unthinkable.
And to think about the victimization that occurred, not only was this girl raped and killed, but then they told the father
who's
did
mourning the loss of his daughter.
Right, that he did it. Told the wife that her husband did it. Then they also had a 7-year-old son. So, by the way, your father's a rapist, murderer. He raped and killed your sister.
How has that family survived this? Are they intact?
From the outside, they certainly seem intact.
God
Who knows?
Wow. All right, so this was a big headlining case, but for many years and for many communities in Chicago, for example. Now that was in Will County.
That was in Will County.
I mean, people have been falsely accused and, coerced into false confessions in the bowels of Chicago police districts, apparently for a long time. And
for 100 years in Chicago, and most notably, it's weird that you have this press conference at the same time John Burge is finally going on trial for what is considered to be 20 years of torturing 200 black men in federal court, and he's in the press every day. You thought that may have tinged a little bit on what the state's attorney's going to say when he comes out.
But no.
So,
Did that get enough press that maybe people in Will County, do they vote for this guy's?
They do.
Yeah. Somebody should run that tape for him.
You aren't kidding. Just the sheer ignorance of the statement of not understanding that in 2010 what putting someone in an interrogation room does to them, what the practice is, and the appellate court ruling when they sued and then the Will County appealed, and then the 52-page decision by the appellate court, and you can find it up on our website at chicagojustice.org, just totally point by point destroyed and criticized in the strongest terms possible all the practices involved in that interrogation and how awful it was done. Basically, they're quoted as saying the Will County sheriffs and the state attorneys had blinders on. There was no reason to ever suspect Kevin, the father. There was no reason to ever think he did it. You had no evidence he'd ever done anything besides this confession that you coerced.
Well, it's tragic all ways around. Tragic.